Okay, we might start if that's okay, just because it's 10:30. Thank you everybody for coming. I actually had originally a different title for this talk until I saw it listed out there, so I changed it to what it was out there. I'm going to give this presentation, and then I actually double booked myself because I thought the other thing that I'm speaking at was this afternoon, but it's not, it's at the same time. So I'm going to leave you in the safe hands of Kathy here, but I will do the first little bit as we go. So my name's Jane Shrivastava. I'm the Flow Cytometry Core Director at the Gladstone Institutes over in San Francisco. Previous to 2020, I was the Flow Core Manager at Imperial College in London at their main campus on South Kensington for about a decade. I started my flow journey in 2003 in my native New Zealand before shifting to the UK in 2004. So as some people know here, because I always go on about it, I consider myself a career technician, and I'm always interested in supporting skill-based careers. And because I realised as I was doing tons and tons of teaching at Imperial College that the way I was teaching was not so good. It was really based on how I had learnt at university, which was lecturers standing there telling me what I should be knowing. I realised that wasn't helping people. So whilst I was working at Imperial College, I did a postgraduate diploma in university teaching and learning, and that really taught me a lot about how I should be teaching. So I'm just going to turn it over to Kathy to speak about herself.
Hi, I'm Kathy Schaefer. I'm co-chair of the Flow Cytometry Research Group with Jane. And I came to the shared resources from an academic background. I have a PhD and did a postdoc in developmental biology, and I taught for 12 years at small undergraduate institutions and kind of got burnt out on small school politics and went ahead and decided I wanted to get back into research. But for me, I was very much a generalist in terms of my skill set. So I started doing the shared resources at HHMI Genelia Research Campus in Northern Virginia in the Molecular Biology Core. And we had a fax aria, and I started getting trained on that while I was still in the Molecular Biology Core, and then shifted into the Cell Culture Core and did more fax, and then became a department of one, and I recognize some of the other departments of one out there. But that was in 2021. So I'm kind of later into the fax, but I also have experience with teaching and teaching at undergraduate levels. So I was very interested in trying to create this community college course to nurture people into the STEM type education.
Great, thanks, Kathy. So I think we all really recognise the importance of cores, like how they've come together really in the past few years. I think when I joined research in the very early 2000s, there really weren't cores, maybe dotted around here and there. But now they really play an integral part of a research institute, an industry, or anything like that. We, as a FCRG, we released a survey in late 2021, although I think it actually still applies now, about a lot of things, but also the question was there of, do you currently have open staff positions? And about 30% said yes, and this really ranged from junior positions right through to senior management and things like that. I wish we'd expanded it a bit further and kind of asked many more questions about that, but I think it's probably even a little bit worse today. And just speaking about my own experience, so when I joined Gladstone, there was a research technologist there, and she was wonderful. She really knew her stuff. She really helped me out. But in late 2021, she decided to go and run her own core in an industry, and I was very happy for her because she deserved it. It took me 9 months and 12 applications to find somebody else, and of these applications, only one applicant had relevant experience in flow cytometry. As soon as I contacted them, they'd been snapped up by industry, they were gone, and so I spent the next few months looking at 3 more people with very, very little experience, and finally hired a graduate student. And I hired her mainly because she was very personable, and she seemed to have a great sense of humour. She'd done a tiny little bit of flow, and she had good references. She had really little experience, but that was all I really could choose from. And I have a little face there with like sort of sweat beads coming out and unhappiness, and that's kind of being a little bit facetious, I think, because I was really on the edge of burnout, to be honest with you. I was running a flow cytometry core for the Gladstone, which is a relatively small institute, but still sort of about 25 groups. We're affiliated with UCSF, so we had people from there and we had people from companies, and it was just me. And personally, on top of that, because of visa issues, my husband was back working in the UK, and I was looking after our 2 children by myself. So I had all of that on top, and it was very close to me packing it all in and going back to New Zealand and living on a farm or something. So it was great. We found my lovely assistant. So that really hooked me in when somebody started to talk to me about this grant. This really hooked me in as to why I wanted to be involved, just the process that I went through. So what this grant is a combination of 2 sort of groups. The first is ABRF, which we all know about, and the second is Innovate Bio. So they really support community colleges throughout the US. They kind of enable and facilitate community college people through into their careers and beyond. So they're a really amazing sort of resource centre for community college students. So these 2 groups got together and decided to form this grant that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And really, when we overlapped the ABRF core locations and the Innovate Bio supported community colleges, we could see there was a huge overlap. And so therefore, we knew we were on the right path by having these 2 associations really together. So the grant was submitted to the NSF in October 2022. The main aim, or the main sort of realisation, was that ABRF facilities and other facilities, not just ABRF of course, are struggling from a shortage of skilled technical workers. So the aim of this grant is to increase the pool of skilled entry technicians for both academic and industry. We don't want to forget the industry partners, even though they seem to be the ones snagging all the employees from us. We don't want to forget them, and we want to have them involved in the grant as well. So the basis of these courses, we want the 6 ABRF kind of groups or research groups around, and each one has their own modular training course. We're starting with flow cytometry because we got asked to start it, so we are the pilot module, and we're starting to write the first module now within the research group. So why reinvent the wheel? As many of you know, there are many great flow cytometry and other biotechnology courses out there. I mean, I've been on some, maybe you've asked your staff to go on some. We all know that there's some really amazing courses out there, but I think what they lack is that core expertise and the core experience. So that's things like biosafety, document writing like SOPs, protocols, risk assessments, all those sorts of wonderful stuff. How to manage users, how to manage their expectations and their difficultness. Equipment extras, so how to troubleshoot equipment, how to standardise across instrumentation. I don't think you'll find that in many flow courses, to be honest. Budget and finance. I am certainly not a budget and finance person. In fact, it sends me to sleep. But I've had to come to know how to manage my budget and how to juggle it and everything like that. And finally, training. I don't think on courses about sort of biomolecular techniques and flow cytometry, we get taught how to train people. So this will be an aspect of our course. So just to talk you through what we're doing in terms of our curriculum map, because we recognise that this is a big course, so it's a 75-hour, 6-module course, so we need some kind of curricular design and curriculum map. So just to show you an example of flow. So first we start with essential questions about what we want people to know at the end of the course. You know, what is it that they need to be able to answer if they go into a flow core. Next, we're going to look at the program goals of the course and the content that goes with those program goals. And then we're going to build on that for student learning outcomes, like what should students be really learning at the end of this? And this ties back into essential questions. We're going to place some assessment on top of that so we know that they've learned stuff, and provide them with a whole bunch of resources so that they feel really well supported in their journey through these courses. So just to dive a little bit deeper, in Module 1, which is an introduction to flow cytometry, we do have 3 program goals at the moment. So I'm just showing you an example of the first program goal. So our central questions involve things like how is fluid delivered to the flow cell, and how do laser and filter systems ensure a fluorescent signal is generated and delivered to the detector. So our program goal 1, we expand that out into fluidics, optics and electronics, and then we just place this a little bit about the core at the bottom. So learning to write standard SOPs, that's something that I've learned over my career, not something that I learned in a course. And learning about safety. So we have a lady who's really heavily involved in biosafety within the flow cytometry community, has put her hand up and said that she would like to write a lot of the content to do with biosafety, which is amazing and really great. So from there we look at the content that we're going to include, and content 1 is about the general knowledge, the introduction to flow, and content 2 is really more about the core knowledge. So just popping those on the side over there, we go to student learning outcomes, and these really involve words like demonstrate, describe, and understand, rather than program goals, which is this is the knowledge that you should know. And from there, assessment, I divide the assessment into theory and practical, because I think a lot of trouble with biotechnology courses is that a lot of it is theory-based, it's not practical, and we want a heavy part of this to be practical understanding of flow cytometry in terms of flow course. So just to add a few follow-ups, we are considering how we credential this course. We've considered micro-credentials for each part of the course. But that is built into the grant, is to study that and work with companies into what is the best way to certify someone that's actually considered as part of the grant. And we are in talks with a couple of companies to use their base materials, so we're not sort of rewriting things, or we're not spending a lot of time, because we're all volunteers. We don't want to, you know, we've got jobs and families and lives and things like that. So we are in talks with them to see if they will help us with the sort of foundational materials of this course. Diversity, equity and inclusion is a really important aspect, with materials being written to take into account those with disabilities and learning differences. I myself have a condition that makes it difficult for me to really concentrate and focus. And so I understand what it's like trying to learn from traditional materials, and this is why we would like to include things where we put even sort of simple things like subtitles on videos, not using black and white paper for resources, because people with dyslexia and dyspraxia really struggle with that sort of thing. So one really big thing we want to do is just make sure that everybody's included in this. So many companies, institutes and community colleges, just to reassure you, have actually signed letters of support for the program, and this is just letters to say everything from yes, we support what you're doing, right through to we will heavily be involved with you at every step of the process. So we're happy to share those with you about who has signed up and who's interested. And we have 2 community colleges, one in Santa Cruz and one in the south. It's called Montgomery College, actually. I think it's in Georgia. that have signed up to be the test colleges for the program. So we are actually going to go in and train their trainers, and then they are going to test out this program to see if it works and how well it works. So what we'd like to do today actually is get you all into groups, or you can be on your own, that's absolutely fine. We were supposed to have flip charts, but that obviously didn't happen. So we're going to hand out some pads at the back, and what we'd like you to do is consider four aspects, and you can either consider all four of them, or you can just grab one and think about it. So the first is in course design. So these are some questions we ask you. We've come up with these sort of points of really important core expertise. And do you think this is correct? Do you think there should be more added to this? And what percentage of a course do you think should be theoretical or practical to make the course really relevant for people? Another aspect really to maybe move away from the course material is to think about staff retention. So do you have a core career ladder at your institute and company, and did you have a hand in developing it? I did. It was kind of fun actually to develop a core ladder, and it was great to see it being implemented, and it's made a big difference actually to retention at Gladstone. And do you have a formal professional development plan, and how does your institute company acknowledge technicians? I don't think I've ever met an institute that does a really fantastic job at acknowledging technicians in the workplace. And also, how do core staff compensation packages compare? And this is optional, you may not want to discuss this, to other scientific staff in your institute or company. So basic skills training. When you hire somebody, or when you're involved in interview panels, what are the interpersonal skills that you're looking for? As I said, for me it was that she got on with people and she could have a laugh, because you need a laugh sometimes in the core when things are in flames around you. What soft skills are important to employees? You know, that's also a really good question. What courses are recommended by core staff for new employees to take, and is this affected by economics? I mean, these days it's really hard. I wanted to send my assistant on the BD training down in San Jose, but it will cost me $3,000, and I don't know if I can afford that. I would love to, but it can be affected by how much the companies are charging. And how do you train junior members when it comes to user management and interpersonal dynamics? Because I think we all know that there's people that are more difficult to deal with in our cause, or that come to our cause. So how do you ensure that the junior staff members don't cry on their first day? Because I have had a situation where a professor made my assistant cry in England because she was just notoriously difficult to deal with. So I had to handle that between both of them. So how do you handle that? And management support. So how can an institute or company design structures that enable a supportive core work environment? You know, what can they do to make sure that core staff just don't take the door when they are either treated poorly or paid poorly? So we're going to leave it at that. Feel free to grab one of those questions. As I say, I was supposed to have flip charts and write out these questions, but I don't. But if there's something there that really takes your eye, then please feel free to just grab it and write down some thoughts. We'll be handing out pads and pens. Feel free to discuss it in your groups, or get together in groups, or just think about it on your own if you're not a social person. And we will get back together, we'll get back together in about half an hour and just discuss and see what people say. Just once I come back from my other talk. I apologise for that. So, and if you, I think if we can have someone up here that if people want to see the questions, they can just ask you to flip to the relevant slide. That would be really great. So is there any questions or anything like that right at the moment? No, everybody's silent. Everybody's like, this is the last day, I'm done. So, ready for Fenway Park tonight, huh? So that's cool. So I'll leave it on this one first. I'm going to slip out, and I'll leave you in the hands of lovely Kathy and the FCRG members. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, we're not quite organized the way we had requested. So if we think it would be most beneficial to have like groups of 4 and discuss each question, or go ahead, Eric.
Kathy, can you remind us how long the course is, how many weeks, how many hours?
Yeah, so the course is 75 contact hours, and that's going to be both kind of lecture, but also in lab, hands-on on an instrument. And if they do not have an instrument, we're going to be working with like software from analysis instruments so they can see what Cytoflex or some type of instrument can do and acquire data and have interactive software. You know, what if we change our flow rate? What if we do this? What if we do that? So one of the other things that we would like to get out of this is that we would have flow cores that are willing to take internships from these community colleges to help with the training. And again, we found that the community colleges that we'll be working with will have a basic biotech program to begin with. So they're getting all of these courses that are going to be kind of basic biotech support in chemistry and things like that. And then this flow course would be a capstone kind of final year course that they have. And the 75 hours either is throughout a semester, it could even be, depending on how the community colleges deliver it, a summer course. But a lot of that will be also interactive in a lab, either at the community college if they have it, or at flow cores that are providing that. Yes?
For the internships, is there funds to make them paid internships? And if there are not, will there be a caveat that if you take an intern, you must fund them for equity?
So right now, I don't think they have anything for internships, but it's actually, they have an externship program for the community college faculty so that they can actually go into your core and understand more about what you do before they're teaching it. So there is that component. But these students will be paying to take a course, so I don't think there's an expectation for you to pay them, except it's taking your time that you're going to be doing the training. So that's, but again, you might wind up with a wonderful technician at the end of it that's going to walk in the door trained by you.
But it will be counted as hours. I mean, there's some benefit. It's not just volunteering.
Right, yeah. And so, and again, this is the pilot program for this whole big NSF grant where flow was actually fingered because we have a lot of open positions and there's a huge need and it's a fairly technical job. And so, again, we're putting on top of the technical training the core work aspects. And these core work aspects should be able to be lifted and go to any one of the type of core disciplines we have within ABRF.
So I'm not sure. Got it. Okay, so I don't know if it makes sense for us just to discuss all this as a big group or break into small groups. It's a lot sort of confusing and overwhelming to me to think about that. So I think maybe we should just go through these questions and discuss them one by one as a group, if that seems
Let's
good.
do that then.
So I'm just thinking about the topics, and I think all the above are important, but I don't think you can teach troubleshooting very easily in a course because we tend to do that as they come up in the laboratory. I mean, you can sort of talk about what things can happen, but unless they're doing it in real time on a machine, I don't think that's very helpful. But on the other hand, talking about all these 6 topics, I think is all good, and I'm thinking 75 contact hours is entirely appropriate. That's just my thought.
Has anyone ever been involved in teaching courses where you have troubleshooting as part of it?
It's a lecture based, but not the hands-on. It's pretty going to say that, yeah, the only times I've ever taught troubleshooting, it's all been theoretical, and I agree that troubleshooting is generally as it happens. We don't break things intentionally usually, just to show how to fix them. But that can happen. But yeah, it's not common.
Just on the subject of troubleshooting, in the context of this course, there's troubleshooting the equipment for why isn't it working, and there's troubleshooting the experiment for why isn't the experiment working, and that might be, those are two separate skills, and you have experimental design on there, but they are two separate skills. Sometimes they overlap, and that could be a little bit difficult to build in there.
I think almost like what we saw in the presentation yesterday in the single persons, if you come up, course, if you come up with scenarios of what you might have seen, again, lecture-based, but you're running a sample that has 1% positivity and your investigator didn't bring a positive control. And so these kind of things, we can talk out and maybe even have a sample like that or something. But again, one of the things we might be able to rely on is some of those simulated software and acquisition things. So you could say, this is the kind of data we're seeing. What might be wrong here? What can we do to improve it?
Real quick question. Have you guys considered having some operators actually do the training, teach the classes, give them the opportunity to do that? Is that something that might be on the agenda?
So one of the schools that's going to be piloting this course actually has someone who's trained in flow, and and that's the thing, having the relationships with the community colleges is going to be important, and that's where we don't necessarily have time to go and do this training, and where we're thinking maybe if we can host the community college faculty in our course first and then help that way.
So my concern is 75 hours does not seem sufficient. Just based on this first section of the course, 75 hours would be gone in the first 4. The other concern I also have with what they mentioned over there is troubleshooting experiments. I don't know what the expectation of them to have into the core once they complete the course, but my ability to help our users in troubleshooting experiments, creating experiment design, is the 13 years I spent working in a research lab doing neonatal immunology. And so my expertise comes in there. These students will not have that access to be able to do some of those things. So what's really the expectation of what they're going to come out of this and directly into a core?
I think it's more about what are the things we look at when we're troubleshooting. Not you need to know everything about everything. And this is where, again, having taught at an undergraduate institution, you've got to give them the foundation, but also train them that some tools are very important. Like when I would be recommending students to go into graduate programs or something, if they could troubleshoot, that was one of the big things that I was always emphasize. So you need to instill in the students that they can't just sit back and expect everything to work. And when it doesn't work, where do we start to look for the problems? And it's more about training them about troubleshooting than actually teaching them all the different things that could go wrong. And again, folks who are already teaching at community colleges have been kind of giving us feedback too as to, well, we can only do this much here. And so the troubleshooting goes through all aspects of all modules. But like, what would you look for when you're doing this type of assay or something like that? So that's the problem. It's like, we want to cover everything all the time, but what do you need someone to walk into your lab, experience-wise, to have to just get a good start?
I would like to suggest that instead of designing as a course, and if we are targeting the community college, can we design it as a discipline, a 2-year program, so a student can be trained on? Like for 2 years, I think we can cover the whole topics we have here instead of just a course for 75 hours.
So, yes, and we've discussed that. This, though, right now, because we want to address all the different disciplines, this is like your basics course. And then we were going to add more modules beyond the 75 hours for specific sorting, making, 40 color panels, things like that, that would be leading into that more advanced course. So that's also where we want to kind of talk about what kind of certification or certificate can we give if you complete the first level, and then if you want to have this more, advanced. But again, we're talking about training technicians and people who are in community colleges. And part of the beauty of sticking with community colleges is these people are looking for jobs at the end of their education. They're looking to be plugged in, and most likely they're probably going to stay within the community where they took their coursework, and they're not going to be moving across country. So training your local workforce is what we're talking about here, and we're talking about for entry-level positions.
So I think it's all good, and I think 75 hours actually is appropriate for a certification, for like a basic certification in the idea of how to run a flow cytometer, et cetera. But I was just sitting here, and maybe it's the Boston fog or my lack of sleep, but I'm wondering, where's the principles of flow cytometry? How does the technology work? What is the theory behind it? I know these are technicians, but still the fundamental understanding of what the instrument does is knowledge that my core employees they need to really do a good job.
Right, and I think, again, she had that when she was first, very beginning?
I think you passed by it.
Oh.
It's an important part, though, yes.
Yeah, and, okay.
Right there.
Yeah, so that was where just what is this instrument? What does it do? How do we deliver, the fluidics, the optics, and the electronics? How do they all work together? So that will be there in the very start. And again, if these community colleges have the funding to have a cytometer to be able to work with. Yes?
I think we have to look at this as basically in the sense of a start, not that we're going to have somebody who would be able to do something. And the hardest part is making sure they understand the background, understanding how the machine works. Everything else is experience. I started doing 2-color flow, and then I started doing other stuff, but it takes time to understand really what you're doing. But understanding the basics of how to run an experiment, as long as we can get them to that point, then I think it's a job of then we set up an internship, a real internship, where they say it's a 2-year or a 1-year program where they actually are running samples and doing things versus I think it's just going to be really a start in a way to get into this system.
Right, and again, it's for exposing them to what is possible, but also saying if you're doing this in a core setting, these are some of the other things that you deal with, and you have customers, and you plug them in. Yes.
Is it being recorded? Do we need microphones? Do they have? Yeah,
Well, I was just thinking about, since we're talking about cores, right? One of the important things about successful core staff is the soft skills, the client interactions. She was talking about, like the staff member that was crying on the first day because of the difficult PI, and I totally sympathize. So, yeah, I think, and this is a start. You can't cover that in 5 weeks. But that is an important part that's not in those 6 parts that are up on that slide right there.
And so that was one of the other points we were going to talk about, was the things that are kind of core specific. And again, trying to figure out, maybe not in the very first module where we're learning about the actual cytometers and the fluidics, optics, and electronics, but definitely, or you even start talking to them about, this is a piece of equipment that's very sophisticated. We're going to have field service engineers come in. It's wonderful to get a good relationship with this person, because then you can learn more every time they come and things like that. So you will be giving a little bit of soft skills even up front there, maybe not so much customer based, but how you are the customer to deal with this. And then, and this was big, and again, this is what they don't do in the available courses right now, because it's to learn about cytometry and not necessarily learn about how to be a service provider.
Oh, I was just going to ask if there's any thought put into prerequisites and things in chemistry and physics and stuff like that in advance.
Yeah, so this will be available in community college that already are signed up with Innovate Bio, and they have a biotech kind of baseline coursework that they're going to be doing the first year. This would be like a second year advanced course portion of that.
Can I follow up real quick? Sorry.
That's okay.
So this is flow, right? There was 4 more?
Yeah, and it was basically on, the different main core disciplines we have right now inside of ABRF.
Is it expected that the student will choose, or will they take all? How does
They'll choose.
Okay.
And so again, because then they'll also have the option within the flow cytometry to get into some of the more advanced modules if they want. But we just want to provide that one big bulk course that says when you walk out of this, and you can go into a flow cytometry core and be able to help almost from day one, but again at a very basic level. And we're not going to teach them all different instruments. We're going to teach them about cytometry and cytometers in general.
I mean, the only reason I ask is at some point there's going to have to be an introduction to what these even are so people can choose, right? We have to go back even further on eventually.
And that's where Innovate Bio comes in and has these relationships already with these community colleges that have these biotech programs. And they were so excited to get involved with ABRF because we have STEM people that we employ and know what we need them to know. And I think,
I'm not flow cytometry or actually fit into any of those cores, but I just wanted to understand what you were doing, because I think it's awesome. And I guess my question is more about what is the money from the grant paying for so I do histology, pathology, and then cancer mouse models. So I'm just here thinking like, okay, I should tap in more to the histotech and figure out how you can add those other things to it and make them understand, of course, thinking about pay too. But anyhow, like what is the NSF grant paying for? And if we don't have that, how can we help build some of these things around us and tap into our HBCUs near us and our community colleges without this grant?
So they're paying for it would be the equivalent if you're working in academia, like a course release or so for someone who's going to be writing the curriculum for whatever discipline that's going to be. They also have sponsors. Sheena Mish actually was bringing in kind of the histopathology type folks too. And so again, we're trying to plug in some of the business aspects of working in a core that can be lifted from the flow course that will go to these other disciplines. And then you have your discipline-specific equipment that you're going to have to deal with. But we all have to deal with our researchers, our investigators as customers, so the soft skills hopefully can, kind of stay the same type of module for all of those. Other question? And so we also have some kind of PIs that are on this grant, Sheena being one of them, Todd Smith being from Innovate Bio being another, that are kind of organizing this as we go beyond flow cytometry and start going to the other ones and identifying the community colleges, supplying some money there for their faculty to be trained and so forth. But for us, I think we as cores aren't looking to get money for this, but we're looking to get people out the other end. So I don't think there's monetary support for you sponsoring somebody in your lab in one of these internships. Yeah, Eric.
So I'm sorry to make you bounce around all the
Yeah.
time, but you were back at the list of questions in my mind. It was Jane asking, would this be helpful? And the answer for me is definitely yes, that when I'm going to hire, I'm usually struggling with the pool, trying to figure out, someone who knows flow, it's very helpful, someone who's done hands-on even better, but a lot of times we don't even get that. So having someone coming out of a community college where I knew they were certified, I would personally see if I could create an internship, paid or unpaid, where we take one of these individuals and bring them in and have them help us set up and run, and then depending on how they do, they could probably lead to a job. So the answer to me is definitively yes.
Yeah, well, and I think that's also where, like, the staff retention, if they come in knowing they need to have some of these other skills and being able to interact with people, it's not like, I'm not just gonna run the instrument, I have to talk to people kind of thing. So that kind of information on our side, knowing what they're going to be getting into and supplying that during the course. These are some of the things you might run into in a core. This is what I do on a daily basis, and even during their internships, just talking to you about what do you do on an everyday kind of basis.
I have a question from online. Actually, goes well with the as a follow-up to this current question. So we've talked about technical prerequisites. What other soft skills are you looking for?
So in terms of, technical, but what soft skills do you guys need? What do you think would be good that we would be able to deliver in a course?
So I can just say how I evaluate soft skills when I have been able to hire, and I have not had the luxury of being able to have an applicant pool with any flow cytometry experience. So I have been looking for things like, do they have any customer service background at all? Like even if they served as a barista at Starbucks, right? Do they have any teaching experience at all? Right? Like, were they working as a technician in a lab and they had to deal with teach the postdocs how to use the whatever, right? Do they, what's the other one? Sorry, it just left my head. I think I need more coffee. Quality control. My current Cytof operator came from Keurig Dr. Pepper, where she was the QC manager for their product line. So like, I don't have any worries about my Cytof because she is on it. She can learn flow cytometry and Cytof, no problem, right? I just need somebody who's gonna be like really excellent with the equipment.
So, any other soft skills you guys look for when you're interviewing? And is there something that we can emphasize in the course that if this person's done before, you can really leverage that as you're going out and working in the core? I think that's one of the things, the recognition, oh, you've already done that, you've already, been a server, or you've worked in retail.
I think the other thing that's really valuable when you're running these instruments is attention to detail, and honestly, the more anal retentive a person is, they're going to be a great flow technician.
As long as they can still talk to people about that. Yeah. So let me see, core knowledge, soft skills, courses. Yes.
Sorry, I think about soft skills a lot. So the other way I think about soft skills is having people know like where they are on the scale of introversion versus extroversion, which for young people in particular, a lot of times they haven't thought about that, or they may have thought about it in the sense of like, well, I'm shy, but actually shyness isn't the same thing as being introverted or extroverted. So in the context of a course like this, like just going through some of the things about like the Myers-Briggs personality testing, like some of that stuff that just is kind of more like self-reflective and helping them figure out what they are like and what they do like in terms of interpersonal interactions. And introversion and extroversion is about like how do you get energy and how do you give energy. And so then knowing that, okay, well, if I'm introverted, then I may feel really exhausted if I take a job where I have to interact with people all day. And so I could still take that job, I just need to be able to arrange my outside life differently. Like those kinds of things can go a long way towards setting someone up for success if they know about that, right?
Yeah. Kevin?
So one soft skill I think is super important is the desire to learn. And I think it would be important to emphasize in this course, like you should ask the scientists like what they're researching, you know, what they're trying to answer. You won't know right away if their experiment is going to answer the question they're asking as someone with, would this be an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree?
It'll be associates.
Yeah, I mean, so you won't know necessarily how to answer their questions, but I think maybe if you come in at that level, you might be intimidated to ask these questions of, you know, researchers and faculty, but everyone wants to talk about their research, and I think it's important to emphasize that in the course, like.
Be curious.
Be curious, ask people what they're researching. As you grow into the position, you'll be able to make connections between labs, say, oh, did you know this person over here is doing something similar? And they, you know, and if you keep that in mind, the customer service comes along from that.
Yeah. Any other soft skills? Anyone? And also, again, potential conflict management, and I'm sure they can do role playing and things like that, but and I think there also needs to be a little bit of understanding that it's never the researcher's fault. It's always your fault, and how to have those conversations where it's like, oh, really? Well, this control maybe wasn't there, so. But again, it's that whole kind of you're offering service and you have to understand your customer base coming in. The last part that we had, I don't know that we can really put it into the course, but it's just something to think about as, you know, can we offer these internships? Is there going to be support from your institution to do that? Do they understand if we have better trained people walking in the door, it's going to be better for everyone in the long run? And I think those are the conversations we can have with our management that says this is actually worth it. And, oh, by the way, recognizing them and making sure that we can keep these people, because it took a while to train them and they've gained these skills. Now let's nurture them and have our core be more robust. I don't know if anyone has any ideas about what you might have done with your management that has helped, or. Yes.
I had to convince my management that we didn't need a bachelor's degree for the position.
So this is where the certification comes in. Like, we're going to be presenting this at Cyto and trying to see what kind of things, what's the baseline we need to have an ISAC be something like that they could give it a stamp of approval, or what all do you guys think would be something that, and this is where we need your feedback, and what would your institute be willing to accept and things like that. So, because it's like, if we can get them in the door with a type of certification from a community college, are they going to be able to advance at your institute? Or do we need to, you know, say they need to take extra modules and then they could, but this is where being a technician, you can learn way more than maybe going back to school to learn it in an academic setting. So how can we convince our management that these are going to be very valuable employees and for advancement within our structures?
So I think being here for the last 3 days, I've taken away a little situation of that. We need to look at this more as also that we want to produce people that can go somewhere else, not just for us also. Being that most of us are an education institution, we should be thinking as we're bringing people in, we're educating them to move on, not just be our careers in our institutions, but somewhere else also.
Yes. Yeah, and that's where too, I was speaking with someone who was like, well, we've tried this and done that, but then you got to provide them jobs at the end. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the whole point. But also, sometimes we have people that get trained by us and then get poached by industry. What if we could have this supply line for both? And so that's where, as well, we're working with cores. Not every core is an academic institution. And also, we have cores that are in industry, trying to pull them on board too. They might not be in ABRF, but we know them because we interact with them. So again, I agree, it's not just training them for us, it's training them for these type of positions. And Jane, you can come on back up. We kind of just opened up the field to talk about the different ones en masse. Yeah. But I think, I don't know if we should do our ways to get involved and just...
Oh, yeah. That was actually going to be my question, because I think it's a great idea, you guys. I came from a community college and then transferred to, the university. And had I have known all the different, formats and all the different fields that I could have gotten into, it would have been just awesome, just to get that preliminary education specifically for one department or another. And I just kind of fell into flow, which I'm sure quite a few people have fallen into it. And it's just been awesome. So, but just to have that introduction to it and all the different departments and, and even in the university, they didn't really go into all the different departments because it was the med tech track. And you learned heme and you learned, microbiology and all that, but we didn't have all the cool toys. But that was a long time ago too. So, but anyway.
Well, and that's the beauty of the Innovate Bio,
right.
Because they already have experience even with high school students, they're already kind of trying to introduce biotechnology and what are all the possible different careers. So this is more the community college one. And you were just in the...
Yes, I was just in the career and cause talk. So yeah, sorry, Kim.
Oh, I just wanted to say this is fantastic. We have 32 core facilities and have been running something very similar. We have a core summer internship. The limitation is, I only have so much time in my day, so I can do one person a summer. But it's been really fantastic, and I actually, selfishly, will have someone for the summer, and I usually pick someone who's freshman, sophomore, rising sophomore, and then they stick around for a few years, and they actually get to learn more because they're helping me out, but then they come across some of the troubleshooting, and it would be great to expand the program, but you can only take so many interns in a flow core when you're a core, well, I'm a core of one.
Yeah.
But so we have all of our core facilities take on a core summer intern. But I will say flow is not something that they often pick as their top choice because they have no idea what it is. But that's actually changing. Some of these, I go to a lot of classes and I, give a lecture on flow and explain about flow, and I also give a plug for this is a skill set that a lot of the biotechs and other places are looking for, and that has actually, just those few classes that I attend has really garnered more interest in flow, and I've gotten more applications now over the years for my for summer internship. So this is fantastic, and thank you for all your efforts.
That's really cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's, when I had the poster up yesterday, I talked to a lot of people that said that they've tried something really similar, but I think they've been without support. And one program actually folded because it was working well, but then all of the trainees were just going out of state, so they didn't think it should be funded anymore. So we're hoping with the Innovate Bio support that this will be a different story. But yeah, there have been many institutes that have tried something similar. So just moving on to ways to get involved. At the moment, there's just a couple of things that can happen straight away. The first one is if you want to join the ABRF FCRG, we're really keen for new members. It's really great. We're a great bunch of people. And at the moment, we are designing and writing Module 1. So just before the grant gets approved, we don't want to go too far into it. But it looks like, as I'm not sure if I mentioned, but we're through the second approval stage. So the third, hopefully the final approval will happen on early June, so that would be cool. So the other one that can happen is actually the one in the blue, so that's resource provision and creation. As I said, we want to make sure that all resources are inclusive of all people with learning differences or disabilities. That's really an aim of ours. And something that can happen a little bit later on. So reaching out to your local community colleges for internship and participation. You can volunteer to test and critique a lesson, or even a small part of a lesson. That would be really cool. Really would love a good critique, to be honest. And then volunteer to be paired with a community college that maybe does not have access to a flow core, that could maybe come in and look at your instrument for a day or two, or use something that's not being used. So those kind of middle three will happen once the grant gets more established. But if you're keen to that, please email me. I'll put your name on a list, and once we get to that stage, I can do that. So just going into resource creation, we really want to focus on video resources. The great plenary talk right at the beginning, she did a survey and everyone wants video, which I think is true. So we need videos about how to do things, troubleshooting, just for your basic seminars, and even a day in the life of your lab would be really awesome. Written resources, we're kind of in conversation with Jamelia about producing a handbook, but we're also going to need some PDFs to give out and some SOPs and some protocols. So I think one big thing that's around now that certainly wasn't around when I was younger was gamification, and I think that's going to be important. We also recognise there will be community colleges with no accesses to flow cytometers whatsoever, maybe rural, maybe somewhere where there's just no access to anything whatsoever. So what I would like is to actually build a virtual platform where they can try out a lot of the stuff virtually, and that's what I'm hoping for there. Whether we get that, I think some of that's been built into the grant about building that sort of IT-based solutions for people that don't have access. Data repository, which we've looked into already, and then maybe links to existing materials. So we are in talks with the ISAC Educational Committee. We have presented to them and they're really keen to get involved. The only issue is a lot of their stuff is behind a paywall, and we're trying to keep this as low cost as possible because it's community colleges, so yeah, that's important to us. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how responsive that they are. And I did have a QR code, but for some reason it just didn't work. I'm going to fix that for Cyto, if anybody's going to Cyto. If you would like any more information, please just email me. Even if you say, I want to be involved in the future, I want to have an intern, or I want to reach out to a community college, if you just email me, and then I can, as I say, I've got lists of people that want to be involved at certain stages with certain things. I had somebody, I think I may have mentioned this, that wants to write the biosafety stuff, and if there's any area of expertise that you have that you would like to contribute as well, then that would be really cool. So we're still at half an hour. If anybody has any further questions, please go ahead.
I just want to mention, as far as written materials, there's so much already. How much needs to be written at this point? I mean, the what is Omerod? Is that how you pronounce his name? The Omerod
Yeah,
book? Like 110 pages or something like that. It's an easy read. I have 3 copies. I give it to everybody that comes to the door in the lab
Exactly.
to work with me and stuff. I don't know that needs to be recreated.
I don't think so either. I think it would be great to have copies of this in all community colleges that take this up. But as I say, we would really like to focus on video, just because I think it will reach more people. Like, I know I've got textbooks in my lab that I really don't read, but I will watch videos. So I think you're right. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to rewrite this stuff. And it's just about affordability for a start, in terms of, because I know the Omeroid book, I think you have to buy.
I thought that was available on, like, Beckman Coulter's website as a PDF download, I think.
Is it?
Something like that. Shapiro's is? Yeah, that one's a little trickier to read. It's really dense. Yeah, I thought it was freely available as a PDF on one of the company's websites.
Oh, okay, thank you. I will definitely look at that, because I mean that's a perfect resource. So that's something that we don't have to do. In terms of videos, though, I mean, I've looked around, and there are people that do introductory video, but maybe not quite focused as we want it to be in terms of the core expertise. And things like that. But yeah, thank you for that. I will definitely look at it, because I thought you had to purchase the book. So yeah.
I just wanted to add the comment. I was just looking to see where the Omerod book is, and it is on the De Novo software website. So
thank you.
it's on
Thank
the
you, Christine.
On the what?
De Novo software website.
Okay, and it's free to access and download.
Yeah, I'm gonna push the chapter 1 button. Yep, it's there.
It's not a download.
It's not a download, but it's online at least. At least that's how I'm looking at it right now.
The Omeroid book, yeah, it's
Flow Cytometry, a basic introduction.
Yeah, it's a really good, like, the chapters that I've read are really excellent. So that can be added to a resource list for sure. That'd be really great. Okay, any further questions anybody would like to ask us?
Well, I just had a comment really quickly. Since I've been familiar with community college systems and the students that go into them, your general associate's degree is going to be comprised of 60 to 80 contact hours in total. So when you're looking at the time requirement for what we're suggesting here, we have to realize that that is literally 20% of the time they are going to spend in their community college. We have to ask ourselves, are they going to be willing to commit that time? I have seen students quit before then because they don't have the resources to get there. So we have to be really sensitive to what we're asking these people to commit.
Absolutely, I agree with you, and this has been discussed in the committee meetings. So there's a couple of things that can happen here. First is people can just accept like one module of the course, like the intro to flow, or something that really applies to them, even the core expertise. Another thing that was suggested, that this was offered as a summer program, and then the internship happens later on in the fall when people go back. But we have realised that it's a big course to try and lump in, so that's why we've broken it up into bits, or potentially offer it as a summer program for community colleges.
And then the other thing is that Jay Robinson's course is online, and you can look at any lesson you want. Good luck with that.
Yeah. I might contact him and see if he would be keen to do that. As I say, all resources are really welcome, and we will be reaching out to the authors and just making sure it's okay for us to use it. So, yeah, what does he call himself? Cytometry man or something like that?
He is
the Cytometry man. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so hi.
Yeah. I think it's amazing initiative. I think it's win-win for people in the startup of their career, thinking what they can do, and for us to get huge possibility to have people who will stay in flow. So I think it's amazing. At the same moment, I'm quiet because I think of how to digest it and how to implement it in the best way. What I hear, it's very ambitious course, which is amazing when people want to go for it. So the main thing is, from my point of view, is definitely to attract people and attract them in the real world thing, not saying, oh, it's so cool, you know? So for the community college people, which I don't know much about community colleges, unfortunately, I wish I know more. I think it's a decision of assigning time, as people were pointing at, and for us to spend time and not get anybody in because it's actually not what they want to. It's decision-making point. So at my university, which is Rockefeller University, it's a lot about inclusion and diversity and all of this. For many years, it's a course for the high school students. It's summer. For the college students, also summer. Yeah. So it's kind of in between these things. We do have labs, we have these things, but it's a lot of dedication to do stuff. So I don't know more. I think my field is it should be course about, in general, the profession of being long-term dedicated person to the resource centers in the scientific world is extremely important thing to bring as a message. And after that, it's diversification for people. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go into genomics? It's cool. Do you want to go to flow? No, I don't know. I really am just thinking more puzzling and how to handle it. It's amazing what you started. It could be very good outcome, but to be more to the point to find out if people are really interested or not, it's a question. I go by public transportation in New York. So in there, I can see things. Community colleges, in 9 months you will become IT technician and you will earn 70,000. I'm just saying that's the way kind of we can start thinking of for the resource center path in the community college. Yeah. So thinking of like, guys, this exists. People just don't know this thing exists and it's a high demand because there are a lot of positions open. So I think it's win-win, but how to do it better, I don't know.
Definitely, and just a couple of comments to add to that. We really do understand the concerns. This grant won't be happening in the next 6 months. It plans to be about a 4-year grant to try and get things off the ground. We chose community colleges a lot because the average age of a community college student tends to be the late 20s. They tend to want to stay in the area. A lot of them do. They tend to want a job so that they can help feed their young family, or they have other caring responsibilities. So we did recognise that, and that's why we went in there. We do have a module 6, which we think is transferable across all biotechniques, which is about the core, which is about user management, budget, professional development, things like that. So I mean, if the community college wants to, it could just choose that module on its own and have that as, this is how you start to get into a core. So we do have that kind of floating module that will head around. And if you have anything that you would like to add to that, like what you think should be, what a core employee should know as they head into this, then that can be added to that for sure. Biosafety will be a part of that as well. So It is just at its beginning, really. Well, it's not really at its beginning. It's about a year into it, but it is a long-term project. And as I say, we do have community colleges that are willing to test this and see how it goes. So that's, I think, really important.
But yeah, please do get in touch with Jane about this and just let her know your interest. Yes. Oh, Mike?
Oh, what is it?
Right here. Sorry.
Do you guys, I have a feeling that your email is going to be bombarded. Do you guys have another option in order to contact you? Like, have you guys considered doing a, I don't know, not a blog, but something similar to that? Because, I mean, you guys really, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, how about this, and how about this? And I'm sure everybody else is too, because it's a great idea.
Exactly.
Boy, you're going to get a lot of emails. So.
That's okay. If you email me, I'm going to send you a Google interest form.
Okay.
And from there you can say what area you're interested in, and there's also like a long answer where you can write anything that you like. And then I'll contact you. I'm happy to contact you and just say, look, thank you so much for your suggestions, and here's the pathway you go down. Or I can say, I will get back to you once we get to that stage of the grant where we need our help. But it will all be recorded. It will all be kept with me.
And then there was one other comment. With the SOPs, my thought process on that is that typically when people get started, they're not writing SOPs. So I don't know if that's something that you guys are really heartfelt on, that you really want to keep, or if you want to just maybe put that on a back burner, because usually that's the manager that does it, or at least the manager that finishes it. So.
Absolutely, and I've only written SOPs in the past few years, but I really think it's something that they need to be thinking about. Even just a basic one, I have an SOP for all experiments that I do. So if I run an experiment, if I make my own experiment, then I do SOPs with even things like what equipment I use, what reagents I have. So more something like that, rather than how to get into a machine and realign the laser. So it would just be thinking about writing those at a very basic level. Yeah.
Kind of just like the experimental setup period. What all things do you need to think about? And by having them write that and then checking to see that they've checked all the boxes.
Yeah, and risk assessments. I really despise writing risk assessments, but they're really important. So really about the features, and I know it will be college or institute specific, but there are generalities that we can teach people about for sure. Thank you. Cool. Any further questions? Otherwise, we can give you back 15 minutes of your time.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.